Donald Trump. Those were the very words that shattered the morning's calm and set into motion a series of events that would forever alter the course of their family life. In a well-appointed suburban home in northern New Jersey, a neighborhood known for its manicured lawns, stately colonial houses, and an unwavering air of prosperity, everything appeared normal that early day. The sky was clear, the air brisk, and yet the moment those words were spoken in a firm, cutting tone, the entire household's equilibrium was disturbed. Seated at a polished oak dining table, where the family usually gathered to share breakfast and conversation, a heavy silence had descended. Melania sat across from Donald, her eyes fixed on a steaming mug of coffee as if searching for answers in its swirling patterns. For years, their relationship had appeared steady, a series of compromises and unspoken agreements keeping the facade of harmony intact. Yet beneath that veneer lay long-suppressed resentments and quiet disagreements that had accumulated over time. On this day, however, something irrevocable had shifted. Donald's words were delivered with such unexpected harshness and finality that an aura of imminent separation began to take shape. The statement was made in the presence of several close friends and relatives who had come to visit unexpectedly. Donald's voice was unwavering and authoritarian, each word hit like a verdict. He accused Melania of failing to meet his standards of an ideal wife and mother, a charge that resonated deeply with everyone in the room. Even as the words left his lips, they seemed to echo with a gravity that even he might not have fully anticipated. The repercussions of his remarks rippled outward, unsettling the guests and leaving an indelible mark on the atmosphere of the once tranquil home. In that moment, a storm of emotions was visible in Melania's eyes. Pain, confusion, and a burgeoning resolve mingled in the depths of her gaze. All her life, she had strived to be the steadfast supporter of her husband, to remain composed even in the face of discord. Yet now, confronted with such a verbal onslaught, she felt her own dignity under siege. Memories of years spent together, of nights filled with shared dreams and the promise of a better future, clashed with the shock of the present. Each word of rebuke, as if a heavy blow to her spirit, forced her to confront the painful truth. The relationship they had built was on the verge of collapse. That morning, the home had already been tinged with an undercurrent of foreboding. Melania fought to maintain her composure while a silent determination began to take root inside her, a resolve not to endure further humiliation. The painful recollections of past compromises and the unspoken plea for mutual respect echoed in her mind. She recalled the time when she believed that love and support were the cornerstones of their marriage, only to see those beliefs shattered by harsh, unexpected criticism. In her heart, the realization grew that she could no longer tolerate being demeaned by the person she once trusted implicitly. The guests, too, were caught in the grip of the moment. Friends and family exchanged uneasy glances, each aware that the idyllic life they had once taken for granted was fracturing before their eyes. Some of them attempted to interject, suggesting that they revisit the discussion later when tempers had cooled, but the charged atmosphere rendered any attempts at calm moot. In that moment, every word, every silence, and every gesture carried profound significance, an unwitting prelude to a transformation that would affect everyone present. Deep inside, Melania was already beginning to form a plan of action. She recognized that remaining passive was no longer an option when every remark and every slight might be used against her in the future. A single, almost inconspicuous thought began to crystallize: the image of her favorite hat, a cherished accessory that had always embodied her inner strength and personal style. That hat, more than a mere piece of clothing, had long symbolized her independence and individuality. In that instant, it also came to represent her emerging determination to protect herself against the cruelty of words. Even as the room remained cloaked in shock and silence, a subtle yet unmistakable shift occurred within her. The home that had once been a sanctuary of routine and predictable comfort was now the stage for a profound internal struggle, a struggle in which every detail, from the glimmer of a tear in her eye to the steely set of her jaw, foretold the beginning of a personal revolution. Donald Trump, unwittingly, had opened a door that would change everything. Though none of those present could have predicted what was coming next, it was clear that from this moment on, nothing would ever be the same. In the charged moments following Donald's harsh declaration, time itself seemed to slow down. As the echoes of his accusations still reverberated around the elegant living room, Melania found herself at a crossroads, a point where the old patterns of her life could no longer sustain her. Each word that had cut through the calm now reverberated within her, fracturing the carefully constructed facade of a long-standing relationship. This was the turning point, a moment when the accumulated weight of past grievances and unspoken emotions suddenly demanded that she confront the reality of her own worth. Sitting in silence, Melania replayed memories of happier times, the days when her husband's smile had once been a source of comfort and assurance. Now, that warmth had been replaced by an icy indictment, leaving her reeling. In the midst of that overwhelming hurt, a quiet, persistent flame began to spark within her. The hurt transformed into a sense of determination, a growing awareness that she no longer deserved to be diminished by the man she once adored. In that private space of anguish and introspection, every heartbeat echoed with a newfound insistence that life must change. At first, she tried to smother the storm of emotions, clinging to the hope that this too would pass. But as the minutes turned to hours, the resolve inside her grew louder, more insistent. The idea that she must reclaim her identity, a sense of self that had long been overshadowed by the demands of her marriage, began to take shape. It was not merely a reaction to the present pain, it was a long overdue acknowledgement that years of self-sacrifice could no longer be justified. Melania's mind raced through memories of silent compromises and moments when her own desires had been sidelined. Each recollection reinforced the truth that she was no longer willing to remain in a state of constant submission. Under the soft glow of an early morning light filtering through the window, Melania's inner transformation was as quiet as it was profound. The woman who had spent years weathering the storm of quiet suffering was beginning to see herself in a new light, one that recognized her inherent value and her right to live without compromise. The thought of that cherished hat re-emerged, not as a trivial accessory but as a beacon of hope, a tangible reminder that she could redefine herself. It was as if every fiber of her being, long muted by the demands of domesticity, was now calling out for the freedom to be herself. Her emotions surged like a rising tide. The painful memories of the past, of countless moments when she had quietly endured humiliation, merged with a burgeoning determination to change her future. Every tender, wounded part of her soul now demanded respect and acknowledgement. She realized that while she had always been the supportive partner, she had too often neglected the need to support herself. In the quiet aftermath of that fateful declaration, Melania decided that the time had come to break free from the bonds of acquiescence. This turning point was not an abrupt epiphany but a gradual awakening. The simmering resentment and sorrow that had defined her inner world for so long slowly gave way to a fierce desire for renewal. With each passing second, the decision became clearer: she would no longer let the harsh words of the past dictate her future. In the stillness of that moment, with a gentle hum of the New Jersey morning outside, she embraced the possibility of a new beginning, one that honored her true self and her long-ignored dreams. In the quiet solitude of her thoughts, Melania resolved to take charge of her destiny. The journey ahead was daunting, filled with the uncertainty of venturing into uncharted territory. Yet, there was a comfort in the fact that the courage to change was finally blossoming within her. The pain that once threatened to overwhelm her now transformed into a powerful catalyst for personal growth. Every beat of her heart was a declaration. It was time to stand up for herself, to reclaim the dignity that had been eroded by years of silent suffering. Thus, in that decisive moment, as the chaos of the past met the promise of a new dawn, Melania's inner resolve crystallized. The turning point had arrived, one that would lead her on a journey of self-discovery, where every decision would be guided by the conviction that she was worth fighting for. The foundations of her previous life, built on silent acceptance and unspoken pain, began to crumble, paving the way for a future defined by courage, authenticity, and a relentless pursuit of personal freedom. After hours of inner turmoil and mounting emotional pressure, Melania reached the point where she had to decide: would she remain imprisoned by the pain of the past or boldly step into a future where her self-worth and personal boundaries came first? This was not a sudden flash of insight. Rather, it was a gradual, almost imperceptible transformation, a gentle yet unstoppable current of determination that had been building quietly beneath the surface. In that transformative moment, she knew that she would no longer allow anyone's words to define or diminish her. In the hushed stillness of the living room, once echoing with unspoken tension and simmering anger, Melania sank into a deep introspective calm. Looking out the window at a world that carried on obliviously, she was struck by a surge of conflicting emotions. Memories of the time when she had been full of hope and optimism clashed bitterly with the sting of recent insults. The realization that years of self-effacement had led her to this crossroads was both painful and liberating. In that quiet space, the idea of reclaiming her identity began to take on new meaning. The image of her beloved hat came vividly to mind. More than just a stylish accessory, that hat had always been a symbol of her individuality and inner strength. In the soft light of the morning, as she hesitated before her closet, she realized that this simple item was now the key to unlocking the person she once knew, a woman unafraid to assert her own needs and desires. Slowly, deliberately, She reached for the hat that had long been a secret talisman of independence. Its fabric, cool and reassuring in her hands, spoke to her of times when she had dared to dream and to stand out. As she held the hat, Melania felt a profound transformation begin to take shape within her. It wasn't merely an article of clothing, it was a statement. By donning it, she was choosing not to reveal the vulnerable parts of herself that had been exposed for too long. The hat became both a shield and a symbol, obscuring her eyes yet highlighting the fierce resolve burning behind them. In that singular act, she silently vowed never again to allow anyone to strip her of her dignity or to undermine her self-worth. In the days that followed, Melania's behavior began to shift noticeably. Every time she caught a glimpse of herself in the mirror, the hat served as a potent reminder of her newfound determination. Her gait grew more confident, and her interactions, though still measured, carried an undercurrent of assertiveness that had been absent before. Friends and colleagues started to notice a subtle but undeniable transformation. The quiet, unassuming woman they once knew was emerging as someone determined to shape her own destiny, to stand firm against the undercurrents of disrespect that had plagued her life for so long. Melania began to take small, deliberate steps toward reclaiming the life she had quietly surrendered. She found herself venturing out for walks in the crisp New Jersey air, seeking moments of solitude that allowed her to reflect on her journey. Each step outside was a quiet act of rebellion, a declaration that she would no longer be defined by anyone else's expectations. In her heart, the hat remained a constant emblem of hope and strength, a reminder that she was capable of transformation even when the road ahead seemed uncertain. Every day, as she navigated the challenges of a life once dictated by silent resignation, Melania clung to the resolve that had taken root in that decisive moment. It was no longer enough to simply endure, she had to actively claim the respect and independence that were rightfully hers. In the sanctuary of her private thoughts, she acknowledged that this decisive choice was only the first step on a long winding journey, a journey of rediscovery, healing, and ultimately empowerment. The hat, in all its understated elegance, had become a beacon guiding her away from the shadows of the past and toward a future where she could finally be the person she had always longed to be. Once Melania took that irrevocable step, donning her cherished hat as a signal of her inner transformation, the ripple effects of her decision quickly spread throughout her community. In a well-to-do suburb of New Jersey, where everyone knew one another by name and private lives were often woven into the fabric of everyday conversation, her personal revolution became a topic of fervent discussion. Neighbors, acquaintances, and even local media soon picked up on the change, each reacting in their own way to the emerging portrait of a woman reclaiming her dignity. On the quiet streets and in the small local cafes where residents gathered for their morning coffee, subtle glances and hushed whispers signaled that something significant was unfolding. Regulars at a corner diner, familiar with Melania's once gentle demeanor, remarked on the shift in her presence. "Have you noticed how she carries herself these days? There's something different in the way she holds her head," one neighbor commented. Another added, "I always thought she was a quiet soul, but now she seems determined, as if she's found a strength we never knew she had." The transformation was impossible to ignore, sparking a mix of admiration, concern, and even a hint of skepticism among those who had long observed her quiet perseverance. Within her inner circle of friends, the reaction was even more complex. People who had known Melania for years recalled the subtle signs of discontent, the moments when she had quietly endured hurt and disappointment. Now her sudden assertiveness was seen not merely as a fleeting reaction, but as the culmination of years spent silently bearing the brunt of her partner's harsh words. Many close friends offered their support, expressing relief that she had finally taken a stand. "It's about time," some would say, echoing the sentiment that every person deserves to be treated with respect. At the same time, there were those who worried about the potential fallout. "I hope this isn't just a temporary phase," others mused, their voices tinged with concern over the unpredictability of sudden change. Family members, too, found themselves caught in a web of mixed emotions. Relatives of Donald, who had long prided themselves on the stability of their family unit, were quick to downplay the significance of the incident, suggesting that every couple faces rough patches. Yet, behind closed doors, many harbored doubts. Heated discussions at family gatherings revealed a tension that had been lurking beneath the surface for years. Some elders quietly urged for mediation, a calm, measured conversation that might restore the old order. Others, however, recognized that the transformation in Melania was more than a temporary reaction. It was the beginning of a fundamental reordering of relationships that could no longer be ignored. Local media outlets soon caught wind of the drama unfolding in one of New Jersey's most talked-about households. Sensational headlines sprang up in community newspapers and on local TV news segments, each reporter eager to capture every detail of this unfolding domestic saga. Journalists interviewed neighbors, family friends, and even casual observers, all while dissecting the symbolism of the hat, the accessory that had become synonymous with Melania's newfound independence. Some articles praised her for her courage, proclaiming her a modern-day heroine for women who had long been forced to choose between silence and self-respect. Others took a more cautious tone, questioning whether such a bold public display of personal resolve might lead to unforeseen consequences in a family already steeped in tradition. As the story spread, the internet became a battleground of opinions. Social media platforms buzzed with posts and debates about the nature of personal dignity and the role of women in modern American society. In online forums, supporters hailed Melania as an icon of strength, a woman who had finally refused to accept humiliation as the norm. "She's showing all of us that it's never too late to stand up for ourselves," one comment read. In contrast, some voices on the net argued that personal issues, especially those of a private nature, should be resolved behind closed doors, not broadcast for public consumption. The polarized opinions revealed a society deeply divided on issues of personal autonomy versus traditional family values. The ripple effects extended even to Melania's workplace. Colleagues, accustomed to her reserved and polite manner, began to notice an unmistakable change in her demeanor. In office hallways and around water cooler conversations, the transformation was a hot topic. Some praised her emerging assertiveness, noting that it brought a fresh, confident energy to team meetings. Others, however, speculated in hushed tones about the potential impact of her personal choices on the professional environment, questioning whether the emotional upheaval might spill over into the workplace. Local civic organizations and women's advocacy groups also seized the moment. In community centers and at neighborhood meetings, the story of Melania's transformation sparked discussions on the importance of self-respect and equality in relationships. Activists pointed to her bold action as evidence that even in the face of long-standing personal and cultural constraints, every individual has the right to redefine their identity and reclaim their dignity. Melania's courage is an inspiration, one speaker declared at a women's empowerment event, a reminder that change is possible when you refuse to accept less than you deserve. Amid the various responses, ranging from heartfelt admiration to cautious skepticism, the public discussion gradually evolved from a scandalous gossip to a broader dialogue about respect, autonomy, and the evolving nature of family life in modern America. Every comment, every news segment, and every social media post added layers to the conversation, reflecting deep-seated cultural differences and a growing awareness of individual rights in a rapidly changing society. In the end, Melania's personal stand became more than just a domestic dispute. It emerged as a symbol of the shifting tides in American attitudes toward personal freedom and self-worth. Several months passed since that fateful day when Melania boldly transformed her life, and the effects of that decision rippled out in ways that no one had fully anticipated. The repercussions of her actions reached far beyond the immediate drama in the family home. They reshaped the dynamics of her marriage, altered her role in the community, and even spurred conversations about what it truly means to honor one's own dignity in modern relationships. From the outset of this new chapter, Melania made a conscious effort to strike a balance between her personal needs and the expectations placed upon her by her family. The seismic shift in her demeanor was palpable to everyone who knew her. Relatives and close friends, who had long been accustomed to her soft-spoken, accommodating nature, were struck by the new assertiveness that now defined her interactions. For many family members, it became clear that the old way of doing things, marked by silent suffering and unspoken compromise, was unsustainable. Slowly, the entrenched patterns began to crumble as Melania started articulating her needs and laying down clear boundaries. On a personal level, the decision to wear that symbolic hat had become the turning point in a journey of self-rediscovery. No longer merely a tool to hide vulnerability, the hat had evolved into a potent emblem of her reclaimed identity. Hidden behind its brim were not tears of sorrow but the glimmer of resolve, a determination to move forward, even if the path ahead was uncertain. To protect her newfound self-esteem, Melania began to invest in herself in ways she never had before. She sought counseling, attended self-help workshops, and even joined local support groups that championed women's rights and personal empowerment. Every new step was a testament to her commitment to self-respect, a stark contrast to the years she had spent in silence. This internal metamorphosis soon spilled over into every facet of her life, including her professional world. At work, colleagues who once saw only a reserved and subdued woman now witnessed a leader emerging. Her ideas, once shared hesitantly in meetings, were delivered with the clarity and confidence of someone who had fought for her right to be heard. The transformation wasn't merely cosmetic, It was a profound, inner revolution that redefined her sense of purpose and self-worth. Her performance improved noticeably, and even those who had doubted her ability to manage personal upheavals began to see the benefits of her transformation reflected in her professional achievements. Within the family, the evolution of the relationship between Melania and Donald took on a complexity that was both challenging and hopeful. Initially, Donald struggled to come to terms with this dramatic change in his wife. His attempts to restore the old order, insisting that conflict was simply a normal part of marriage, were met with a quiet but firm resistance. Over time, however, a mutual realization began to dawn on both partners. The harsh words that once defined their interactions had given way to an earnest, if tentative, effort at re-establishing communication. With the assistance of a family therapist, they embarked on a slow, painful journey toward rediscovering a balance that respected both sides. Though progress was neither swift nor without setbacks, the couple gradually began to negotiate a new dynamic, one that acknowledged past wounds while also leaving room for a more equitable future. Beyond the confines of her home, Melania's transformation sparked broader conversations within the community. The initial shock and scandal had subsided, replaced by a reflective dialogue on the nature of personal dignity and the evolution of traditional family roles. Public forums, talk shows, and community meetings began to feature discussions that used her experience as a case study, a vivid example of how one person's decision to assert herself could have far-reaching consequences. Articles in local newspapers and segments on regional TV debated the merits of gradual change versus sudden personal revolutions, ultimately painting a picture of a society in transition. Yet, the journey was not without its critics. Some voices, particularly from more conservative corners, cautioned against what they saw as precipitous actions that risked destabilizing the fabric of family life. They argued that the deep-seated values of patience and compromise were being sacrificed on the altar of modern self-assertion. Meanwhile, supporters lauded Melania for demonstrating that personal fulfillment and respect were not negotiable. They were fundamental rights that everyone, regardless of circumstance, deserved. This tension, far from resolving itself quickly, underscored the complexity of reconciling tradition with transformation in contemporary American life. For Melania herself, the outcome was a daily balancing act, a continuous process of negotiating between the pain of the past and the promise of a more authentic future. Every day brought new challenges, but also small victories that reinforced her belief in her right to live on her own terms. Through it all, the hat remained a constant symbol, a quiet reminder that her journey towards self-empowerment had only just begun. In the quiet moments of introspection, she realized that this transformation was not an endpoint but an ongoing evolution, one that required constant vigilance, self-compassion, and the courage to change with each new dawn. In reflecting on the past few months, it became clear that the legacy of her decision was far more profound than a simple marital dispute. It was a testament to the transformative power of self-respect, a reminder that the path to true happiness was paved not by the expectations of others, but by the unwavering commitment to honor one's own worth. Melania's experience had become an inspiration not only to those who shared her struggles, but to an entire community grappling with the shifting norms of family and personal freedom. It served as a potent example that while change is often painful and fraught with uncertainty, it is also the first step toward a life that is truly unapologetically one's own.